Hi. Hi, my name is Bernice Simmons. I am a licensed professional counselor and a certified clinical trauma professional, and I'm very blessed to be able to be here and share tonight about finding joy in Christmas. Especially this year, and pretty much any year, this time of year can be very hard for people. The holidays, starting all the way back from Halloween or All Hallows Eve, all the way through the new year. There's all these incredible holidays, families coming together. Everywhere you look, it's these expressions of joy and happiness, and yet people struggle with feelings of grief and loss. And then they feel even worse because they see all this great joy and they just don't seem to be experiencing it themselves. And my hope today is to give you some information, give you some insight, give you some information that might help you be able to find joy in Christmas, regardless of whatever losses, or maybe even perhaps because of some of your losses. At the very least, I want you to understand that whatever's going on with you mentally, physically, spiritually, as a result of whatever loss you're experiencing, and it seems that the holidays is making it worse, what I'd like to be able to help you see is maybe perhaps you're actually normal. Maybe perhaps this is what's supposed to be happening, and yet there's something that you can gain to help you learn how to work with it better. So I'm going to use this whiteboard tonight, and I'm going to talk through what happens with the brain, sort of the process of how we think, feel, and behave, and how all of this comes together, and then and causes or results in us feeling bad and not finding joy in Christmas. And my hope is then, after that, it'll help you understand what's going on with you, and then I can take that information and help you find ways, just things that you can do to help you find joy in Christmas, even though you've suffered various losses, the death of loved ones, loss of jobs, loss of being able to be with family. This year, with what's going on, so many people aren't able to be with family, be with people that they love, and that is something that we grieve as well. Fearful anticipation of what's going to happen next, struggling over what's been happening the last few months or years. And all of it, I hope, in the time that we're here, I'll be able to offer you some information that's going to help it make sense. So I'm going to start with showing you a little bit about what happens in the brain. Now, your brain is incredibly complex, but we're going to start with some basic realities of the brain, and I think it'll help make sense of what's going on for you, for each of us. But we're going to say this is your brain. And your brain has, again, it's more complex, but we're going to start with 3 primary levels of the brain. Down here, we have our survival brain. That's back here. So when I'm talking to you and I go back here, I'm referencing this brain. This brain, whenever we feel any sort of threat, anything negative, anything harmful, anything painful, mentally, physically, spiritually, we're going to go into, the survival brain is going to kick in, and we're going to go into a fight, flight, freeze mode. Whatever our sort of learned response, whatever our kind of developed coping mechanism for dealing with difficult things and complicated emotions and various traumas and pain and struggling, we're going to go down into this. Some people fight and they push and they get mean, they get ugly, they say ugly things, they do ugly things. Some people freeze, meaning they just kind of clam up. I'm here, but I'm not here. I'm here, but I'm not doing much. I get sort of paralyzed. That's the kind of thing when you might look back and go, gosh, I wish I had the voice to say this. Or I wish I would have done that instead of nothing. You're probably a freezer. And then we have flight. Flight is people who are avoiders, and they really will, if things get negative, things get hard, I'm just going to avoid the situation. I'm going to flee. I'm going to actually get away. Well, what also happens is there's a flee that happens that's a mental flee. Because especially if we've experienced a hardship and troubling times when we were younger or when we were in other circumstances where we didn't actually have the power to leave the situation, we develop a different kind of flee. It's not a physical flee, but it's a mental flee. That kind of flee, that kind of survival response is where we will sort of take on a different character. We will, perhaps sometimes we revert back to childhood behaviors when something difficult happens now, such as any kind of loss that we might have, that we revert back to. We flee who we are now, and we flee into this new role or this old role as a child. Perhaps we flee into the role of workaholic, or we flee into the role of a perfectionist. But mentally, we flee the difficulty of what is right now and take on a role that is different so that we can make it through the situation. The reason we would go down here is if our emotional brain kicked in negative emotional memories. This middle level of the brain, this emotional memory brain, has stored positive and negative emotional memories since you were in utero. And what that means is, whatever you've experienced, your emotional memory is stored in your body and stored in your brain, those deep, long-term memories. These are the memories that you don't necessarily consciously remember, oh, back in this year, this event happened with this person. These are the memories that come upon you almost instinctually. These are the things that, like, when this happens, you automatically respond this way, almost as though you don't have a choice. What I'm going to offer you tonight is that you do have a choice, and these negative memories just flooding in during this time of year, you can begin to recognize that they are, and what these are doing is they're kicking you down in here into this survival mode where you might feel powerless, you might feel scared and frightened, or just a lack of joy, a weight on your shoulders, a darkness, like you're just trudging through thick air. So that's because these negative emotional memories has kicked in. What we get to do, and we're going to talk about tonight, is how to get out of this place of no joy and come up here to this, what I call the God-given reason brain. And this brain is, generally speaking, the brain it's up here in your prefrontal cortex. It's a balanced activity between your right and left hemispheres. It's the brain that can go, well, things are terrible, and I'm still okay. These people, these things are happening, and I don't have any control over that, and there's still good to come from that. When we can really do that, that's when we're living truly the image in which we were created. We're made in the image and likeness of God, who is all-knowing. And He can be the Christ on the crucifix, that there's suffering, there's death, and from that comes new life. And that's the truth of our living. And what I want us to understand is physiologically, the way our body and our brain works, we express the truth of the resurrection, the crucifixion and the resurrection. After every crucifixion, there's a resurrection. A crucifixion, to say, in our when we're experiencing pain and loss, is when these negative memories are kicked in and we feel the loss and the suffering and the isolation, the loneliness, the harm done to us, the unjust things that are happening. The resurrection is that we can say, even though He died on the cross, even though I'm suffering, good will come of it. And it's not about dismissing what was, but it's about grasping the additional truths that are happening at the same time. We are people that believe what Christ said, that the kingdom of God is here and now. And yet we look around and we think, it's not so great. But the reality is, and what will help us get up here, is to be able to say, yes, I have these losses, and yes, things are terrible, and I have these good things in my life. It's not about, let's forget the bad stuff and act like it doesn't happen. It's Christmas, it's the holidays, let's just be happy. We can say, this happened, and they're still good. The way we look at that in a way that can be a context that can give you something to work with is with all of this, all of these emotional memories that kick in, those are things that we are thinking. We might not be conscious that we're thinking them, but we can become conscious that we're thinking of them. And when we get more aware of the thoughts that are coming through our mind, we can get more control and more management over how we respond and how we see the world around us. The big picture pattern here is that when something happens, whatever loss, the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, all the shutdowns and the isolation and the struggles, freedoms being taken, fear of what might happen, that I might get sick, I might get hurt, whatever the loss, there's thoughts that come to your mind. You think something. When you think something, the thoughts create feelings. You feel something as a result of your thoughts. And when you think and feel, that drives your behavior. And the combination of all of this ultimately brings forth some sort of body response. this thinking, feeling, behaving, and body response, that's kind of a snapshot of why we're even having this presentation. We want to help you find joy in Christmas. And this is sort of the blueprint to do so. When we're not finding joy in this season, it has everything to do with what we're thinking. Yet, what we're thinking comes from what has actually happened to us. What are our life experiences? So if you're struggling with finding joy in Christmas, one of the main things I want to offer you today, and I want you to gain from it if you get nothing else, is because the way you feel, behave, and how your body responds has so much to do with what you're thinking, the thoughts that are going through your mind. I want you to be able to say to yourself, I'm not broken. I'm not something or somebody who needs fixed. But I am a person who has thoughts and responses to things that have happened to me. We can probably all think back to, like, when this holiday season comes along, there's just an immense amount of memories that come. And some people have an immense amount of positive memories that come. And so while the whole rest of the year may be rough, the holiday season is like when the family picked it up and they stopped fighting and they just had a good time. And even if I didn't get anything all year long, there was something good that happened over Christmas. So some people this time of year get flooded with more positive memories. And when they get flooded with those positive memories because of what their history was, it's very easy to go up here and live in this higher level brain. The right and left hemispheres, the prefrontal cortex, things seem to be firing well. What that happens when you do that is working up here increases your positive or good neurotransmitters, the chemicals in your brain. When you're working down here, it's like a place of fear. You know, I think they say 365 times we see in Scripture it says, "Be not afraid." And that "be not afraid" doesn't say, well, dismiss all the bad stuff that's happened in salvation history. It says, with all the struggles and the negative things that have happened in our salvational history, be not afraid anyway. So what I want to offer you is in this time of Christmas, you can find joy even though very troubling things have happened and you've been in some pain throughout the year, because you can feel the pain and feel the joy at the same time. You can suffer and be not afraid. You can know that, okay, the holiday season is kicking in, and so maybe the holidays were rough. Maybe because of the loss, this holiday season is going to be even worse. And so what's going through my mind, the things I'm thinking, is I'm thinking about what has happened long time ago and recent. And so I want to sort of take an inventory of what am I thinking. Because the more negative I'm thinking, negative thoughts and memories kicking in, the more negative I'm going to feel, and then thus the more negative I'm going to behave. What is my behavior going to be if I'm thinking negative? My behavior is going to be I might get angrier and grumpier. I might look at myself and go, gosh, I sure wish I was a better mom over the holidays, but I just seem to get meaner during this time. Or I just close up. Everybody's connecting with everybody, but I'm freezing. I'm not accepting any invitations. I'm not inviting people over. I'm not doing extra things. Or I'm fleeing. I'm become a workaholic, and I'm just getting everything done, but I don't really feel anything good about Christmas. It's all about getting stuff done. Well, perhaps what's happening is you are thinking, remembering about a lot of the negative, painful, harmful things that have happened to you. And so what that does is you feel horrible, because feelings always come from thoughts. And then, so you choose a behavior that is somewhere down there in the protective nature of you. And then what happens is your body response, you might feel lethargic. You might feel nauseous. You might get even more knotted up, a lot of knots up in your shoulders. You might feel foggy-brained, just really kind of feeling physically out of sorts. This time of year, a lot of people will go double check with doctors and stuff because they're just nervous because it seems like something's not right. Now, part of that is because it's the end of the year. People are trying to reach their deductible, or they've reached their deductible and they want to get more taken care of. But also, some of it is because our body responds to what's going on inside of us. And if this season is a very troublesome season, you're going to find your body feeling more troublesome as well. Because when you are down in this concerning negative thought process and all these memories are kicking in, whether you're conscious of the memories or not, they're going to be kicking in. And especially if you've experienced losses, and if those losses somehow coincide with this holiday season, or again, the holiday season, it's not as good because I don't have the money I had. It's not as good now because I can't go visit relatives. It's not as good now because of somebody was sick. There's all kinds of reasons that perhaps, because there's a big difference, like holidays are supposed to be good, but what's happening is not as good. So there's a big gap. And my mind is thinking about all the reasons there's this gap. And when it's doing that, it sends me down into survival mode. What is released down here in survival mode, physiologically, I'm releasing cortisol and adrenaline. Those are chemicals that my body needs if I need to run like mad to protect myself. I need to fight to save myself or save my children or somebody else. Or I need to stay perfectly still so whatever criminal perpetrator is around here, it doesn't get any worse. So when I do that, my body's releasing all these chemicals. If what is actually happening in my environment is not actually something that I am really in some sort of threat and danger for, I'm just feeling that and behaving that way because of the thoughts in my head, then those chemicals that are released don't really have anywhere to go. And so it sort of begins to clog up your system. And that clogging up of the system is what results in your body being extra tired, your immune system getting weaker, even down to like your joints hurting more, because there's a release of chemicals in your body when you're thinking a bunch of fearful, negative, harmful, threatening, traumatic things. And so then that chemical is being released, but your behavior is not such that you actually use that chemical, because maybe you shut down, you isolate. There's really no reason to run or fight. And so you're not using up that chemical. And so it builds up in your body. And then what happens is your body then has a negative response. So now it too is sending even more negative to your mind, to your thoughts. Yes?
So how do we stop the negative thinking? Is there a way to stop? Because it seems like that's the root of everything, right? The negative thoughts. So how do we stop our brain from thinking?
Yes, and that's exactly where we're going to go with this. I want you to know the process here, and I wanted you to see this so that if nothing else, you could say, oh, okay, no wonder. Because sometimes when we're not finding joy in Christmas and we're feeling all this bad stuff, on top of feeling bad because of the memories that are kicking in or the new losses and struggles we're having, on top of that, we're telling ourselves even more terrible things. What's wrong with me? I must be awful. Nobody's going to want to be around that. So I'm giving myself more grief because of whatever is happening because I don't understand it. So when I'm giving myself more grief about that, I'm really getting myself more and more tightly stuck down into the survival brain. So knowing what's happening, the reason we want to know this is so at the very least, when we find ourselves moving in this negative spiral, we can go, okay, no wonder. Instead of going, what's wrong with me? It's terrible. I'm such a bad person, which is going to send me down into my survival brain even more. We want to know this so we can go, oh, okay. I know some of why I'm feeling bad because I've experienced XYZ loss. I know why I'm feeling some bad because this time of year was rough for me growing up. Or fairly recently, there was a death in the family. Maybe this is the first holiday season without a particular loved one. Oh, okay. So we can say, that makes sense. I'm not messed up. My brain and body are functioning normally. And I don't have to be stuck in this. Because one of the things that happens with the losses and the various types of pain that we experience that is causing us to not find that joy in Christmas is we feel powerless. We feel out of control. We feel like we're a victim to whatever's happening, and we build up various types of resentment, maybe to the season, maybe to the people we're experiencing life with, maybe even to ourselves. And so knowing, okay, this makes sense. Considering so much negative has come through, it makes sense that I feel bad and that I'm behaving in ways that shut me down, which increase my feeling bad, and so my body's even feeling bad. Now that I know this is typical, and that means, and to some degree I want you to know that means you're working normally. Because you could probably take a good enough inventory and remember some of what you're thinking that's making the holidays troublesome. And that is where we'll go next, is when we look at we came together to talk about finding joy in Christmas. And finding joy is really focusing here. And then looking at this. When we look at I'm going to erase this so I can start again, because we're going to move right into what you were asking about. Okay, so this is what happens, and this is probably why I'm not feeling joy. So I didn't come here to be confirmed as to why I wasn't feeling good. But I really want it to be important for you to know that there's a reason that you feel this way. You're not messed up. You're just responding to life. And yet, at the same time, you're not powerless. We're going to look at that primary pattern that we just looked at there. You look at how you think, how you feel, how you behave, and how your body responds. And this is where we take a personal inventory. You kind of go, okay, we just stop. It's the holidays, everybody's cheerful, at least the commercials. But why do I feel so bad? Why don't I feel the joy? Okay. What am I thinking? Not like, what am I thinking? Like I'm going to give myself grief. But an inventory. What is going on in my head? Am I remembering my losses? Am I feeling the pain of missing a loved one? Am I thinking about, oh my goodness, how am I going to make Christmas good this year because we're not making as much money? What are the thoughts going through my head? I can intervene here by noticing what I'm thinking. I can input positive. That's why the Hallmark movies are so popular this time of year. They're trying essentially to balance out the negative with some positive. Anything that you can do that would put good, positive thoughts into your mind is going to increase the positives over here in the thinking point of the cycle. And so you can intervene here. You can intervene here with your body's response. With your behavior. Intentionally choosing behaviors that are sort of contrary to how you feel. What we do sometimes when we go into that survival brain is that we isolate. So one behavior to intervene with this behavior is to intentionally connect with somebody. If I intentionally reach out to other people in some way, even if I just go walk out in a busy area where I can see people, it helps. The behavior pulls me out of isolation. If I'm moving into isolation, we're not made to be in isolation. We are made in the image and likeness of God. We are made in the image of the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. They are a communion of persons, giving and receiving to and from each other. So the more we isolate ourselves and disconnect from other people, and there's not the possibility to give and receive to and from other people, that'll send us down here, because that's not the way we were made. We will feel some sort of threat, some sort of insignificance, inferiority, something's wrong, and that will then release the bad chemicals, and the more that's released, the more stuck we get. So we can intervene in our behavior, and we can intervene in our body's response. All of this is about being aware of you. And again, we're made in the image and likeness of God, who is all-knowing. So the more we can know about ourselves and how we are responding to the world around us, the more we can recognize where can I intervene, where it might be easiest for me to intervene to bring some joy. If I notice that my body's response, this is a big one for me. My body's response is I get very much so knotted up in my shoulders, my feet get sore, and I am learning to tend to the body. Getting to a corner, massaging my back, asking my husband to massage my shoulders or massage my feet, recognizing that I'm noticing for me where I carry my stress in my body, and then taking it upon myself to seek some way to tend to that. So that, however, it's not about that I'm going to change all the circumstances and struggles in my life, But in the moment my body is sending negative to my mind, it's saying, it's awful over here, we hurt, things are terrible, I'm not sure how much you're going to last like this. So if I intervene here, and I massage, I take a hot shower, I get a heating pad, I do something that tends to the negative response that my body's having, then as I'm tending to that, then now my body is sending a positive message to my brain saying, oh, this is nice. Oh, good for you. Oh, good. Okay, it's not so bad now. And so when you get the messages from your body that things are better, that pulls you up here to your survival, not to your survival, pulls you up here to this God-given reason brain. Because if my body's feeling better, that's a message that I'm not as threatened as I might be feeling. That the circumstances are actually better than I'm feeling or thinking they are. So I can intervene here, intervene in my behavior, and intervene in my thoughts. And that's kind of the short answer as to how do we find the joy in Christmas. We get to be intentional. We get to take inventory. We take inventory at Christmas. I mean, what do we hear? We hear, he's making a list, he's checking it twice, right? We get to make a list for ourselves and for the important people in our lives. And it's not just the gifts that we want to get for them that they might enjoy, but it's taking inventory of ourselves and perhaps others, especially our close ones in our life, and helping bring good to their presence, helping them to think well. One of the things that happens when we're not finding joy in Christmas is because perhaps part of my thoughts is that I have a long history of Christmas being, the whole holiday season, being just racked with stress and what's missing. And so now, here as an adult, the things that come to my mind around this holiday season are a bunch of miserable things. Maybe families were broken up at that point. Maybe we never had any money, and so Christmas, when compared to other people, it wasn't so great. Or, during the holiday season, everybody's home, and so there's a lot more fighting. Whatever the case may be, if my mind is bringing all these thoughts to me that are negative, I'm going to go in a negative cycle here. So what I can do, say if I knew that's the case for my loved one, for my spouse, that he's had a bad history with the holidays, then I can help him by intervening my behavior and connecting to his behavior, intentionally doing good things for him. Being more patient for him if he is in a negative cycle. If I know he's in this negative cycle because of his own history, then I can go, okay, that's because of his history, it's not because of me. He's not trying to take something from me. And then I can also go, wait, I might be going in a negative cycle, and that's me. And it's not because really what's going on around me and my spouse and other things right now are actually bad. So I can help others if I recognize that, if I know that what might be coming through their mind. And we, again, being made in the image and likeness of God, when we do for others, it helps us as well.
Same thing for children. So if our children are experiencing the loss of a grandparent and they won't get to see them this Christmas, can we apply that same thing that you do for a spouse to your children?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because specifically in the area of the grieving the loss of a loved one at the holidays, one of the things that people might be thinking is, and it makes sense to think it is, oh no, they're not going to be here. I'm not going to be able to have this holiday with them. It's going to be so terrible, and I'm not going to get anything from them, and I can't give anything to them, and they always gave me such a good gift because they love me and they know me better than anybody else. I'm not going to see them, and they're the only one that told me that I was wonderful. They're the one that when I saw them, their eyes leapt, and I knew they were happy to see me. And so what I'm experiencing, or my children are experiencing, or other loved ones, in this particular kind of loss, the loss of a loved one having died, is we're thinking about, they're not here. Okay, they're not, and that's true. We take a look at that thought, they're not here. And what sometimes we start thinking is, all these other losses that we're going to have because they're not here. And so what we can do when we recognize that that's the thought, oh no, they're not here, and all these terrible things are going to be the case because they're not here, and our children might be experiencing that as well, then we can intervene in that cycle by adjusting our behavior. Some of the adjustments of the behavior would be like making rituals this holiday season, especially if it's the first, or at any point that part of your struggle or your children's struggle is that a significant person is not present, and it makes it hard to be joyful if mom's not here, dad's not here, a sibling's not here. So what we do is we intervene, we involve our body, and we do particular behaviors called rituals that bring to mind the good of that loved one. We don't have to go through the season acting like they're not here, and we don't have to stay in misery because they're not here. Because sometimes what happens when we've experienced the loss of a loved one, and that's taken our joy, is we kind of think, the last place I was close to them was when they died and when we were miserable because of it. And so to move forward, to do something different and find joy and enjoy things, my thoughts are that I'm leaving them. But what we invite you to do in that particular instance is let your thoughts and your behaviors sort of include them in the holidays. And when you include them in the holidays, you can know they're not forgotten. Other people can know they're not forgotten. You will have a mix of it hurts because they're not here, and I'm thrilled that we're remembering them. One of the examples that I'll share in that is my mom and dad passed away quite some time ago, and one of the traditions or rituals where my siblings and I, we think, gosh, they're gone and they're not here. And what happens now during the holidays, there's a little less joy because we don't have the hub where we go to for mom and dad. And so we're all separated. And that, for me and for some of my siblings, that kind of brings us down here, a little sinking mood, a little less joy for the holidays. And so what we've done is we've intervened by one of our behaviors, a ritual that we've started, is we do something that my mom used to do, and no matter where we are, we take pictures of that and send it to each other. This is a glass that was my mom's, and so I keep it around, and every Thanksgiving and Christmas, when I'm making the Thanksgiving or Christmas dinners, I put a little bit of butterscotch schnapps in here. My mom did that. It was a tradition she had, and we all knew Mom had this exact cup of butterscotch schnapps in the kitchen while she was cooking Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner. And so we do that, my siblings and I, that wherever we are, when we start making our dinner, we put a little butterscotch schnapps in here, and we'll take a picture of it and share it with everybody, sharing our butterscotch schnapps. So if some of us are together, then we'll all have our cup. But it's a way of intervening with our body and our behaviors that brings a little bit of joy, a little bit of good about and remembering our loved one rather than just thinking about the sad that they're gone. We get creative, and we get something that attaches us to the here and now. Our right brain is our creative brain and our memory and our emotions, and our left brain is the here and now, the tangible, the engagement of senses. So anything that you can do that can sort of replace an old negative memory with something positive and engage your body is going to bring more positives to all of these. And when your body is engaged in something that positively reminds you of some person in a good way, and you allow yourself to bodily engage, and your body response is that instead of shutting down, you get engaged, then that will, and you think, wow, this is a fun thing to do with us. It's fun. We wonder what kind of creative situation or creative picture we're going to take, and we just know it's a joy that we're not going to see each other in person. We know we're going to get a text sometime during the day that has a picture of our loved one saying, we're thinking of mom and we're thinking of you. So that's what I invite you to think about as to ways that you can intervene in how you think, how you behave, and how your body responds. The gift you can give yourself this holiday season, when the whole purpose is first to remember God, of course, and how He intervenes and how He loves us and how He knows us so well. So we too can take a look at this and pay attention to ourselves and really get to know ourselves and think, how do I think? What are the thoughts coming through my mind? How is my body responding? What is the behavior I'm exhibiting? And where can I intervene to make things more joyful? And what I want to point out is this is not at all about lying to yourself and acting like bad stuff didn't happen and let's just forget it, get over it. It's not about that at all. It's about understanding that we can have those experiences and they are true and they really happened. And perhaps some things are really happening bad right now. And at the same time, we don't have to be powerless to it. We can do something about it. Another thing that happens that I want to point out that again, it's just something else to help make sense of it, and maybe each of us, we recognize ourselves and our own responses a little bit differently, is when we get in a cycle of we feel threatened by our thoughts, which are a result of our perception and what's happening in our environment, and that sends us to negative feelings, negative behaviors, negative body responses. Sometimes we'll revert back to a sort of a survival behavior. There's a concept, I guess, called the victim, rescuer, perpetrator triangle. And what that is when we are in some way under some sort of duress, we're real uncomfortable in our situation, we're feeling a lot of pain, we're feeling threatened by our lack of joy. Sometimes what we do is we, in that survival response, we pick one of three roles as to how we respond to the circumstances. And then we look back and think, gosh, Christmas isn't very fun when we do that. And what that is, it's the victim, rescuer, and perpetrator experiences. Those are three primary roles that we'll fall back into. So if we realize over the holiday season that we're kind of thinking, feeling, behaving, and our body's responding in a negative way, one of the things that we can look at is, am I going into victim mode? Victim is sort of I don't have any control over everything. Everything's happening and I can't do anything about it, and it's all bad, and sort of this real powerless, and you get paralyzed, or maybe you just shut down in different ways. But the big thing in the victim role is where you just get real overwhelmed by the sense that there's really nothing I can do. Everybody and everything is happening against me. When the reality is, there's a lot of bad things happening. And there are some things that are out of our control. So instead of pegging out on total victim, we can go, okay, yes, some things are out of my control, but I do have control over other things. And the way to intervene in my behavior and my body response and my thoughts is to think along the lines of, okay, instead of everything is out of my control, it's an acknowledgement. Yes, some things are out of my control, but not everything is. So I can come in a little bit, and there's limits to what I have control over, but what do I have control over? I can't control the various shutdowns. I can't control that I or my spouse was fired. I can't control that this person in our life died. Yeah, I can't control that. But instead of falling in the, oh no, now I can't, everything's bad, I can't control everything, I can acknowledge, what am I thinking? I'm going to be realistic. Yeah, there's things that have happened and are happening that I don't have control over. So what do I have control over? I don't have control over anything that'll make any of this go away. True. And yet I do have control over some things. I have control over the thoughts I allow to ruminate and spend a lot of time in my head. I can distract myself. I can start thinking about what I do have that's good for me. I can clean my house. I can call a friend. I can do something to improve my mood regardless of what's happening around me. I'm not completely out of control. Some people will come into the rescuer mode, and they'll get overwhelmed. The rescuer is somebody who, when things start going bad, they're going to step in. They're the workaholics. They're going to get everything done. They're going to do everything just to make sure that everybody is okay. It's a sense of I need to control things, keep them from going bad, and I'm going to make everybody happy. And so holidays for rescuers are exhausting because they want to get just the perfect gift. They want to have the whole season set up just right. They want to make sure and connect with everybody because they feel a need, or there's sort of this burden that to keep things from being bad, which maybe some of my thoughts are, if I don't perform so well and make everybody happy, then I'm bad. Notice those thoughts. And so then I overcompensate by trying to rescue and take care of everything, and ultimately I'm exhausted. And so for some people, they struggle to find joy in Christmas because maybe they're kind of tired of having to do everything. And one of the ways to intervene for yourself there, or if you know a rescuer, is to step in and say, you don't have to do it all. You don't have to do as much. You can be helpful, but not rescue. Again, it's recognizing, thinking in my head, I don't have to control and make sure everybody else is okay. If I can change my thoughts and intervene in that way and say, okay, I can be nice and I can be helpful, but the other person's response to what's happening is their responsibility, not mine, then the intensity of my thoughts will go down, and thus the intensity of my feelings and my behavior will become more where I can control it. Because when I'm working down here in the survival brain, I really feel like I have very little to no control over my behavior, and I don't have control over how other people respond to me. But when I look at this think, feel, behave, and I look at this triangle and I think, I don't want to be on any extreme. I don't want to be the perpetrator that gets mean and ugly and yells at everybody and is mad. I can, instead of being the victim and thinking I'm powerless, I can go, okay, what do I have control over? Instead of being the rescuer and thinking I've got to do everything and then I exhaust myself, I can go, okay, I don't have to do it all. Change my thinking and my behavior. My thinking is, I'm not responsible for making sure everybody else is happy. They're responsible for that. And I don't have to do everything. I can be helpful, I can do some things, but I'm gonna limit how much I do because it wears me out mentally and physically.
Now, is that something that we put in ourselves, or do people also make us the victim and make us the rescuer? Or is it 50-50?
Well, no, it's not that anybody makes us, but throughout our history, we've learned if I go here, it helps. Or if I go here, it helps. Or if I go here, it helps. If something bad happens, and I get in this kind of victim, I can't do anything mode, somebody steps in and helps me. So I'm good. And if that's worked throughout the years, it sort of becomes my go-to. If I've been the rescuer, and when I do all this stuff, at least I get some accolades, and I get people saying thanks, and people have a little less to complain about, then for some time it's served me well. So I can get stuck in those patterns. If I've learned that being mean and ugly and yelling at people is the only thing that gets them to stand off and stop, expecting so much of me, then I'll do that. It's not that anybody makes us. It's that over the course of our life or particular relationships, we found a particular role, at least for a little bit, serves its purpose of reducing sort of the negative input. And so in some way, it at least temporarily calms the negative and brings forward a positive. And so, but again, it only works for a little while. So what we want to do is, instead of being on these extremes in how we think, feel, and behave, to where we're like spinning and life is crazy and at any moment I can just fly off the handle, we want to find this happy middle ground. We want to be able to, I'm not a victim, I can do what I have control over, and that's it. And I'm not responsible for somebody else. I'm not responsible for somebody. I can be helpful, but I don't have to do it all. I don't have to be the perpetrator and mean, but I can be what's called assertive. Assertive is difficult for some people. To be assertive, and it's really hard sometimes during this season. You've got family coming together, and so you're reverting back to old behaviors. And some people aren't used to standing up to a family member and saying, no, I can't do that. No, I really don't have room for you to come and stay with me for 2 weeks, and I have to pay for everything because you don't have any money. And I don't have that. Some people, to do that seems very mean, because historically, if they've done that, there's been additional chaos that happens because of other people's responses. So it's about learning to recognize, to think, I'm not a victim. I can recognize I don't have control over some things I do. What can I do? I can be helpful. My thinking is I can be helpful, but not responsible for everything. And so that's going to adjust my behaviors. I'm not going to do it all. And then I can be assertive, but not be a perpetrator. It's okay to set healthy boundaries, and that's not being mean. And so if I can work on the way I think about some of these things, my typical responses during this holiday season, when I'm feeling, remembering a bunch of painful things and feeling threatened in various ways, I just take a deep breath and notice what's happening with me. And I can go, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing. All right, this is the stuff that I'm thinking. All right, considering all that makes sense. Considering the losses I've had, and they're real, and how they affect me, and so how that's affecting my mind, then it makes sense that I'm doing this. So I invite you to think with that, what can I do good for me then? What can I do that's good for me? This is a season of giving. And there's so many times out there that ways set forth for us to be able to do for ourselves. You can do good with healthy ritual, with doing good things for your body, doing good things for others. And this is a great season for doing things for others and doing things for yourself. So when you notice that you're not finding joy, you notice that you're maybe somewhere on some extreme of this kind of survival response, get curious about why. Okay, part of it is because there's hard things happening. Okay, that's what's happening, but what am I thinking about what's happening? Curious. Okay, I'm remembering. This is what I'm remembering. And then I go, okay, that's what did happen, but is it actually happening now? And then I acknowledge, okay, that's the cycle I've gone on. Yeah, that makes sense. That's why the holidays are hard for me, because I don't get to be with family like I used to be. Oh, that makes sense. Acknowledge it, accept it, and then do something good for yourself. Or do something good for someone else. Because when we take that action, it's involving our body, and we become other-focused. Oftentimes when we're feeling a lot of lack of joy, often it's because of our right brain. We're remembering a whole lot of old stuff. We're feeling a lot of things intensely, and we're creatively imagining that it's never going to be good. So when we take action with our bodies and we're doing for someone else and we're interacting and we're using any kind of visual and physical, tangible thing to ritualize and make good now what was bad before, then that activates our left brain. And anytime we're going right, left, that gets us up here in the healthy brain and where the good neurotransmitters are being released. And then we will be better able to clearly think through the holidays, the things that we're experiencing. We're going to be able to go, you know what? Okay, I'm trying to do it all. But this year, what I'm going to do so that I can find more joy in Christmas is I'm going to be helpful where I can be helpful. And I'm going to ask other people to participate. And I'm going to be good to myself wherever I can be good to myself. So that it's not about erasing the history and forgetting it. We don't want to do that. We don't erase history. We read the Old Testament and we read Scripture every time we come to Mass. We are not a people about erasing the history. We are about a people of in the here and now, knowing the history and knowing that here and now is better. We know what happened, and we know that God is involved, and He is pursuing good for us. So we get to do the same thing. We can know that what we're thinking about is maybe some old stuff. Maybe we're fearfully anticipating some future stuff. And at the same time, we can know that regardless of all of it, God's involved. We can know there are good things going on in the here and now. So if we can get in the here and now, we can intentionally participate in something that connects us to, makes good of the loss, makes good of the bad. If I've lost a job and I can't buy as many gifts, well, then I get to be creative and I get to think positively about different ways that I can give and participate and notice the needs of others and serve those needs, and notice my own needs and serve those needs, or request that those needs be served by loved ones in my family. So it's just about taking the reality of how our brain and body works and how God has created us, and being able to acknowledge the struggles and the losses, and then find the joy in it. Specifically, since we're approaching Christmas and the struggles that we're having now, one of the things that we anticipate during Advent as we are seeking Christmas is we're remembering how kind of terrible life was for people at the time before Christ came, and they were so anxiously looking for and waiting for the Messiah. And it was amidst various new governmental controls and people being made to go take census that the good of the Lord came. It was through the crucifixion, the suffering and the awfulness of the unjust death of Christ, that new life came. We have redemption. And we can look at the suffering of the cross, and while we recognize the pain and the misery, we can at the same time recognize the joy of the new life that comes from it. When we combine that spiritual reality, that truth of our faith, with the truth of how our mind and body works, we have all the tools we need to find joy in Christmas. I'd be happy to help in any way that I can if there's any additional questions that people might have. Maybe there's comments you can put down, and we can be happy to seek to respond. If you are interested in any more that I might be able to offer you, you can contact me through St. Joseph. Maria has my information, or you can go to faithfulchanges.com, which is my counseling page. I'm just grateful to have had this time with you, and I hope it's been of benefit. And I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And God bless.